Have you ever noticed how people don't appreciate you until you're gone? They assume you'll always be there, always trying, always proving yourself. But what if I told you that the moment you stop seeking their validation is the moment they start noticing what they took for granted? It's like an oasis in the desert, ignored by the thirsty traveler who assumes he'll find something better ahead. But miles later, when the heat burns and the thirst becomes unbearable, he realizes his mistake. He turns back, only to find the oasis is gone. Or think of a warrior who never boasts, never fights for attention. Yet when the battle comes, everyone looks to him for strength. That's the power of silent worth. Because while they're busy ignoring you, you have a choice: chase their approval or elevate in silence. And when you choose yourself, that's when the regret sets in. When you stop proving yourself, the world starts paying attention. So how do you make them feel your absence? Without begging, without proving, without saying a word. Stay until the end, because the last one will change everything. Number 1. Let their indifference teach you who they are. Let's talk about one of the hardest but most valuable lessons in life. When someone ignores your worth. Maybe it's a friend who never truly appreciates your presence, a partner who takes you for granted, or a workplace that overlooks your efforts. It stings. It makes you question yourself. But here's the truth. Their indifference is not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of theirs. People show you their priorities through their actions, not their words. If someone constantly overlooks you, dismisses your contributions, or only acknowledges you when it benefits them, take it as a lesson, not an insult. The worst thing you can do is chase their validation or try to prove your worth to them. Because the moment you do, you give them power over how you see yourself. And that's exactly what Stoic wisdom warns us against. Epictetus once said, "He who does not value himself cannot value anything or anyone." Let that sink in. If someone refuses to see your worth, it's not because you lack value, it's because they lack the ability to appreciate it. People who are emotionally immature, insecure, or self-absorbed are often blind to the worth of those around them. And the more you try to force them to recognize it, the more they pull away. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Ethan, was always the one reaching out in his friendships, making plans, checking in, putting in the effort. But over time, he noticed something. If he didn't make the effort, the connection faded. He decided to do a little test. He stopped texting first, stopped initiating plans. And guess what? Silence. The people he thought cared never reached out. At first it hurt, but then he realized something powerful. He had been forcing connections that weren't meant for him. Their indifference was teaching him something. Who truly valued him and who only kept him around out of convenience. So, how do you handle people who ignore your worth? First, stop seeking validation. The more you chase, the less they respect you. Second, pay attention to their actions. If someone repeatedly shows you that they don't value you, believe them. And finally, shift your energy elsewhere. Pour your time into people and pursuits that uplift you, not those that drain you. At the end of the day, your value does not decrease just because someone refuses to see it. The right people will recognize your worth effortlessly. And those who don't? Let them regret losing you by thriving without them. Number 2, stop seeking their validation. Let's talk about one of the biggest mistakes you can make when someone ignores your worth, seeking their approval. It's natural to want recognition, to want people to see your value. But here's the problem. The more you chase approval, the less valuable you appear. Every time you try to prove yourself, explain yourself, or fight for their attention, you're unknowingly sending a message that your worth depends on their validation. And nothing lowers your value faster than that. The people who ignore your worth. They do so because they can. They've learned that no matter how much they disregard you, you will always be there, seeking their attention. And as long as they have that power, they won't feel the need to appreciate you. That's why the most powerful move you can make is to withdraw your attention. When you stop seeking their validation, you shift the balance. Suddenly, they're the ones left wondering, and that's when they start noticing your absence. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Think about that for a second. When you crave validation, you put yourself in a position of weakness. You become emotionally dependent on what others think of you. But the moment you stop chasing, you regain control. You realize that you were never the one who needed them. They were the ones who should have valued you in the first place. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Maya, was always the one making the effort in her relationships. Whether it was with friends, family, or even at work, she found herself constantly seeking approval. She'd overextend, over-apologize, and always go the extra mile just to feel appreciated. But instead of earning more respect, she found herself feeling more overlooked. One day she had enough. She decided to stop proving herself. She stopped reaching out first. She stopped explaining herself. And something surprising happened. The same people who once ignored her started noticing her absence. That's the key. People only value what they feel they might lose. The moment Maya stopped chasing, the balance shifted, and suddenly those who had taken her for granted started making the effort. So, how do you stop seeking validation? First, recognize your worth is not tied to their approval. You don't need their recognition to be valuable. Second, distance yourself. Pull back your attention, stop proving yourself, and see who notices. And finally, shift your focus inward. Instead of seeking validation from others, build self-respect from within. At the end of the day, the most powerful way to make someone regret ignoring your worth is to show them you don't need them. When you stop seeking their approval, you become someone they can no longer ignore. And that's when they start chasing you. Number 3, refuse to play their game. Let's talk about a tactic people use when they sense they have control over you. They ignore you to test your reaction. It's not always about disinterest. Sometimes it's a calculated move. They want to see how much you'll tolerate. They want to know if you'll break, chase, or beg for their attention. And the more you react, the more power you give them. Here's the truth. Some people ignore you not because they don't care, but because they want to see if you'll fight for their validation. They pull away to see if you'll come running. They go silent to see if you'll overthink and overanalyze. They disappear and wait to see if you'll beg for answers. And if you do, they win. The moment you engage in their game, you confirm their control. They learn that you are the one who cares more. And once they have that confirmation, they lose even more respect for you. That's why the best response is to give them nothing. No anger, no reaction, no attempts to fix things. Indifference is more powerful than any emotional outburst, because when you stop playing, they lose all the control they thought they had over you. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What does that mean? It means that if someone is trying to manipulate you, the worst thing you can do is fall into their trap. If they are ignoring you to provoke a reaction, the worst thing you can do is give them one. If they thrive on seeing you frustrated, the best move is to remain calm. Instead of sinking to their level, you rise above it. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Daniel, was dating someone who would go silent on him every time they had a disagreement. At first, he thought it was just their way of processing emotions. But then he noticed a pattern. Every time things weren't going their way, they'd withdraw, waiting for him to chase. It wasn't about solving problems, it was about control. One day, Daniel decided to stop playing along. Instead of panicking or sending multiple messages, he simply matched their silence. He focused on himself. And guess what? They came back, wondering why he wasn't reacting anymore. That's the key. When you refuse to play the game, they lose their advantage. People who use silence or indifference as a manipulation tactic only have power if you react. The moment you stop seeking answers, stop chasing, stop proving, you take that power back. So, how do you handle this? First, recognize the game. If someone constantly ignores you and then reappears when it's convenient for them, it's not genuine, it's control. Second, stop reacting. Don't chase, don't explain, don't engage. And finally, shift your focus inward. Use their silence as an opportunity to strengthen yourself, not weaken yourself. At the end of the day, people who ignore you to test your reaction are looking for proof that you need them. The best way to make them regret it: show them you don't. When they realize they can no longer control you, they'll be the ones left wondering what happened. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 4. Elevate yourself in silence. Let's talk about the most powerful way to respond to someone who ignores your worth: self-improvement. When someone dismisses you, takes you for granted, or acts indifferent toward your value, your instinct might be to confront them, demand answers, or prove them wrong. But the truth is, the best response isn't words, it's action. Instead of wasting energy trying to make them see your worth, focus on elevating yourself in silence. While they overlook you, work on yourself. Build your skills, refine your mindset, improve your physical and mental strength. Keep growing until your progress speaks louder than their indifference. Because nothing unsettles people more than realizing the person they once ignored is now thriving without them. Here's the reality: success is the best response. When you level up in silence, you shift the power dynamic. The people who once dismissed you will eventually notice, but by then, you won't even need their recognition. You won't need their approval because your progress will have already validated your worth. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." What does that mean? It means that instead of trying to convince others of your value, become undeniable. Let your actions, your discipline, and your growth do the talking. When you embody success, you don't need to chase validation. It comes naturally. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Liam, was once overlooked in his workplace. No matter how hard he worked, his efforts went unnoticed. He could have complained, confronted his boss, or sought recognition. But instead, he focused on self-improvement. He developed new skills, expanded his knowledge, and worked quietly behind the scenes. Months later, an opportunity came up, and suddenly, the same people who had once ignored him were forced to acknowledge his value. But by then, Liam had already outgrown that environment. He had elevated himself so much that he had better options. So, how do you elevate yourself in silence? First, shift your focus inward. Instead of proving your worth to them, prove it to yourself. Second, set personal goals. Define what success looks like for you and pursue it relentlessly. And finally, let your growth speak for itself. When you rise above their indifference, they will eventually notice. But by then, you won't need them to. At the end of the day, the best way to make someone regret ignoring your worth is to become someone they can't ignore. Keep evolving, keep growing, and let your success be the only response they ever get. Number 5. Master your emotions. Let's talk about one of the most powerful skills you can develop: emotional control. When someone ignores you, dismisses you, or takes you for granted, your natural reaction is frustration, anger, or sadness. You might feel the urge to prove yourself, demand an explanation, or show them what they're missing. But here's the thing: the more you react emotionally, the more power you give them. People who neglect or ignore you often do it because they want to see how much control they have. They test your emotions, waiting to see if you'll break, overreact, or try to win them back. But the most unsettling thing you can do? Remain completely indifferent. When they realize their silence doesn't shake you, when they see that you're unbothered by their games, they start losing their grip. And that's when the power shifts. Here's the truth: nothing unsettles someone more than your complete indifference to their neglect. They expect you to chase, to get angry, or to try harder to gain their approval. But when you respond with calmness, confidence, and emotional mastery, they no longer have the upper hand. They start wondering why you're not reacting. And that uncertainty, that's what makes them regret underestimating you. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." What does that mean? It means that it's not the act of being ignored that hurts, it's how you interpret it. If you see it as rejection, it stings. But if you see it as proof of their own shortcomings, it loses its power over you. When you realize that someone ignoring you says more about them than you take back control. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Ava, was in a friendship where she always had to initiate plans. If she didn't reach out, days or weeks would go by without a word. At first, she let it get to her. She felt unimportant, questioning if she was the problem. But then she made a shift. Instead of reacting emotionally, she simply stopped trying. She redirected her energy elsewhere. And guess what? That same friend who once ignored her started noticing. They started reaching out, wondering why Ava wasn't chasing anymore. But by that point, Ava had already moved on. So, how do you master your emotions in these situations? First, pause before reacting. Don't let someone's actions dictate your emotions. Second, change the narrative. See their neglect as a reflection of them, not you. And finally, focus on yourself. Use that energy to improve, grow, and thrive, not to win their approval. At the end of the day, emotional mastery is the ultimate power move. When you stay calm, collected, and unbothered, those who once ignored you will be left wondering how they ever thought they had power over you, and that's when the regret sets in. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 6. Walk away with confidence. Let's talk about the most powerful move you can make when someone ignores your worth: walking away with confidence. It's easy to think that if you try harder, prove yourself, or wait long enough, they'll finally see your value. But here's the truth: the moment you stop caring is the moment they start wondering. When you walk away without anger, without resentment, and without trying to convince them of your worth, you send a clear message. You are not dependent on their recognition to feel valuable, and that kind of self-assurance is rare. Most people cling, beg, or try to prove themselves when they're ignored. But those who walk away with confidence, they're the ones who are truly free. Here's the reality: leaving without resentment shows strength. It's not about proving a point or getting revenge. It's about choosing yourself. When you detach from people who fail to see your worth, you reclaim your energy, and ironically, that's often when they start to notice what they lost. because people only value what they can no longer have easy access to. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius once said, "A wise man is content with himself and values his own approval above that of others." What does that mean? It means that real confidence doesn't come from being acknowledged by others. It comes from within. A truly strong person does not beg for validation. They do not chase after those who overlook them. They know their worth, and if someone fails to see it, they simply move on. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Olivia, was in a relationship where she always felt like she had to prove herself. No matter how much effort she put in, she was never truly appreciated. She tried talking about it. She tried being more understanding. She even tried pulling back to see if that would make a difference. But nothing changed. Then, one day, she made a decision. Instead of explaining her worth, she simply walked away. No arguments, no dramatic exit. She just left with grace and confidence. And guess what? Months later, that same person who ignored her suddenly started reaching out, wondering why she had stopped trying. But by then, Olivia had already moved forward, focusing on herself and surrounding herself with people who actually valued her. So how do you walk away with confidence? First, detach emotionally. Don't let their indifference dictate how you feel about yourself. Second, don't seek closure from them. Find it within yourself. You don't need their recognition to validate your worth. And finally, shift your energy towards self-growth. The best revenge isn't anger, it's thriving without them. At the end of the day, when you stop chasing those who ignore you, you make room for those who truly appreciate you. Walk away with confidence and watch how quickly they start wondering why they ever took you for granted. Number 7, expand your circle of influence. Let's talk about the most powerful way to shift your energy when someone ignores your worth. Expanding your circle of influence. Too often, people waste time trying to gain the approval of those who don't appreciate them. They fixate on why they're being ignored, what they did wrong, and how they can prove their value. But here's the truth. The right people will see your worth without needing reminders. When someone fails to recognize your value, don't shrink yourself trying to fit into their expectations. Instead, expand your world. There are people out there who will naturally appreciate what you bring to the table, your intelligence, your kindness, your ambition. But you'll never find them if you're too busy chasing those who don't see you. The moment you stop seeking validation from the wrong people and start surrounding yourself with those who uplift you, your entire reality shifts. Here's the reality. If someone doesn't appreciate you, they are not your people. It's as simple as that. There are billions of people in this world. Why limit yourself to those who don't see your worth? The problem isn't that you lack value, it's that you've been offering it to the wrong audience. Instead of waiting for someone to acknowledge you, take control and seek out relationships, personal and professional, where your presence is valued, not overlooked. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." In other words, the people you spend time with should challenge you, inspire you, and bring out your best. If someone ignores you or takes you for granted, they are holding you back, not helping you grow. The Stoics understood that a person's true worth is not determined by those who overlook them, but by those who recognize their potential and push them to evolve. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Nathan, spent years in a friend group where he always felt like an outsider. He was constantly trying to fit in, trying to gain their respect, trying to be included. But no matter what he did, he was always an afterthought. One day, he decided to shift his focus. Instead of trying to force connections, he started seeking out new environments. He joined professional networks, attended events, and met people who actually valued his presence. And suddenly, everything changed. Instead of chasing friendships, he found himself surrounded by people who naturally respected him. He no longer had to prove himself. He had simply found the right circle. So, how do you expand your circle of influence? First, stop fixating on those who don't appreciate you. If they don't see your worth, that's their loss, not yours. Second, seek out people who align with your values. Join new communities, connect with ambitious individuals, and place yourself in environments where you can grow. And finally, remember that you don't need everyone to like you, just the right people. At the end of the day, the most powerful shift you can make is redirecting your energy toward those who truly see you. When you stop chasing the wrong people, you make space for the right ones to find you. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights.